Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews, a podcast where we take a look at movies that we watched in our youth and ask the age-old question, is that any good? Today we are taking a look at Mallrats. It is sequel season and we are doing something very unusual. Oh dear, sorry. I usually do remember to mute like my phone and my laptop before we start recording, but I'll be honest with you, Chris, didn't do that today, and it all just started beeping, and I don't know how much of it was in my ear from my phone or how much of it was in real life from my laptop, but that's the downside of having WhatsApp. That's the downside of having WhatsApp on both machines.
Well, I definitely heard it, so that's usually a gauge that the audience may have. But it's all good. You'll have a little beep. Don't worry about it.
Well, that's all right. It's fine. Yeah. So this week we're taking a look at Mallrats, which is a really interesting thing to discuss on sequel season, because I think a lot of people will, and I think fairly, and I don't even know if I disagree with these people, would argue Mallrats, not a sequel. It is a sort of movie set in the same universe as the previous one. And I think that is a really interesting thing that we will discuss as we go. But, I think we've sort of covered our history with Kevin Smith in general in the Clerks one. But I think we both sort of discovered or came across Kevin Smith's work, as a lot of people do, at a certain age when this sort of, like, almost rebellious, like, bucking the rules kind of filmmaking felt really cool and edgy, and sort of spoke. It did. I mean, it's so lame to say because it is a thing people say, but it did sort of speak to a generation, and I think it actually ended up speaking to two generations by the time. I think now, I don't think young people are finding these movies and having the same reaction to them, but I think there were like two generations that fell in love with these movies. I think kids in the 90s and I think kids in the early thousands had the same sort of experience with these movies 10 years apart. So Mallrats, obviously, I will have seen it as I saw most Kevin Smith films by probably illegally downloading it after someone told me I could get it on Kazaa or something. I don't know. Like it was either a DVD handed around high school or something I acquired online for sure, and loved because I loved all of Kevin Smith's films as a youth. I don't think I have much in the way of specifics about this one, but once I was sort of in with Kevin Smith, which happened sort of accidentally through Chasing Amy and then through Clerks, we talked about that when we reviewed Clerks. I was just then on the Kevin Smith train and worked through his filmography. Do you have any specific background for Mallrats?
No, I can remember watching it at an ex-girlfriend's mum and dad's house while everyone was out. I don't know if that was late though. So
everyone, including her mum and dad and her, just you. They'd all gone out and left you in the house.
Yeah, well, we were doing this bizarre. Yes, I mean, I didn't want to get too specific, but we were doing this bizarre thing where we lived half the week at my mum and dad's and half the week at her mum and dad's. It was an awful plan. I wouldn't. Who knows how we were doing the podcast at that point? I have no memory of ever recording a podcast at her mum and dad's, but maybe. You must have seen
Mallrats quite late then, because this sounds like quite a recent.
Well, this is the thing. I don't know why. I don't feel like that was the first time I'd have watched it, but equally, unless I was going through a heavy Kevin Smith phase, which is very possible, equally, I can't really think why I'd have watched it unless I was making some attempt to watch all of the Kevin Smith movies again. I don't know.
You're doing like
that is a vivid memory of what. Yeah, that's a vivid memory. That's a vivid memory of watching it. I must have podcasted in our mum and dad's house. I must have done, but anyway, I can't really remember now. It was a long time ago. But the other, although we'd only just started at that point, so maybe.
So yeah, so we've been going. Anyway. We've been going since 2012. We are at 12 years now. Tragically,
yeah,
for better or worse, of doing this.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, well, it was around that time. But then again, this would. Well, who knows? Anyway, I think maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But So I don't know if that was the first time, but it definitely falls into the category, as most Kevin Smith films do, which I talked about during Clerks, of I was a fan of his before I watched all the films.
Right.
And probably even now, there are still Kevin Smith films I've not seen, despite
really
being a big fan of The Man.
That's really interesting, though, because I think that is specific to an experience that, like, I don't recognize, because obviously I came across the Kevin Smith movies in my teen years, sort of like in the thousands, in the noughties, so to speak, before he was podcast man. You know what I mean? Like, before he was a personality that people were into. I liked his movies, and when his podcast started, I listened to the podcast because I liked his movies, or I'd just seen an audience with Kevin Smith, which is, I think, a lot of people's first introduction to Kevin Smith being an amusing human just in general, right? Which is like sort of a stand-up show, but not really. It's like improvised answers stories he's telling at college campuses across the US that they filmed, and then edited these most interesting answers into a sort of a stand-up special of a sort. And it was so impressive because it was just sort of him telling stories, and they were so funny. They were almost as funny as like pre-written stand-up material. Because he was just a very naturally amusing guy. And I remember being blown away when I finally saw that. But I was already into all of his movies when I sat down to watch An Audience with Kevin Smith. So it's really interesting that you have a very different in on Kevin Smith, where you were probably you were probably more familiar with the man as almost not quite a comedian, but as a podcaster and a guy that did those sort of funny Q&As than anything else.
The only exceptions being Dogma and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which I had seen before I really got into Kevin Smith as a podcast.
Man, I can't imagine seeing Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back before seeing Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy. That'd be crazy.
I know, it's mad. Yeah, we've discussed that before. It's nuts. Like, because I vividly remember watching that at a mate's sleeper. As it was his birthday sleepover, and that's the film we put on.
I think I saw a bit of it before I'd seen the rest. That seems familiar to me. Like, a friend had it on at his house, and I saw scenes from Jed. So I was like, "What is this dumb stuff?" And it was only later on that I saw the movie in full and went, "Oh, this is that movie I saw 5 minutes of at a friend's house."
And I also, and if we're repeating anything from Clerks, apologies, but I also remember a friend making me sit down and watch Dogma and explaining that it was all part of a shared universe.
Right.
Like, I remember him literally talking me through that.
But the interesting thing that's funny about that, because I think a lot of these movies do work entirely on their own. Like, I don't feel like you need to sit someone down before Dogma and be like, right, so there's going to be some characters you're going to meet in this called Jay and Silent Bob, and they've been in 3 other movies. Like, do you know what I mean? There's no need at that point, I don't think.
To loop things back to Mallrats, though, the interesting thing about me, being a fan of Kevin Smith first and sort of then the work, is that to me, Mallrats was a joke. Mallrats was, I heard him. I was listening to an interview that he did on the 25th anniversary. Whilst doing some bits around the house after watching the movie, and he talks about he slightly, in my opinion, rewrites history, because he says that it was Mallrats was the punchline until the punchline was yoga hoses, and I'm like, buddy, there was a period where Jersey Girl was the punchline in between, mate. Like, absolutely.
Yeah. Like, I don't remember. I don't even remember Mallrats being the punchline for that long, because I think he started podcasting in the Jersey Girl is the punchline era of his career. Therefore, like, the most references from my knowledge of his work outside of movies was him, making jokes about Jersey Girl. Oh, I'm the Jersey Girl guy. 100%.
And at some point we'll do Jersey Girl, because I think the movie's better than people give it credit for. I think it's fine. But he took the piss out of this a lot and talked a lot about this sort of strange the commercial failure of this movie, but the success that it found on home video and people watching it. But to start a discussion, one thing he said that I think he said Jim Jacks, the producer, said this to him. Is he said to Kevin Smith, when Kevin Smith was really upset and stuff about the box office failure of the film, which I'm sure we'll talk more about later with specific numbers. But he said we weren't wrong, we were just early. And Kevin Smith is like, well, apparently is like, and I'm probably not telling this right, but Kevin Smith's like, what do you mean? He's like, we weren't wrong to make this movie. It's just too early for it. But at some point, this movie will hit, and other movies like this movie will hit. So to start us off with the discussion, Dan, do you think that is right? Do you think this movie is in some ways ahead of its time?
No. I think this is
next question.
No, I will elaborate if you'd like. I think the wider thing I'm going to come to is no, I don't think it is. I just think a movie like this, and historically movies like this, the audience don't get out of bed to go to the movies. That's been true throughout the history of cinema. Stoner movies, so to speak, sort of teen comedies, raunchy teen comedies, tend, with a few notable exceptions, these kinds of comedies tended to not have huge box office. And especially in the era, that became particularly true once we left the 80s and we started to go into an era when everything was ultimately going to be on VHS and DVD eventually. I think, I remember distinctly Jack Black talking about the Tenacious D movie's box office failure and its success on home video, and being like, they were all too stoned to come to the cinema. Like they didn't know it was out. And he was joking, obviously. But there's a certain audience this movie appeals to that by the time this movie comes out are just gonna pass it around on home release if it hits. Too cool to spend the money and the time to go to the cinema. What are we, the kids from the Archie comics? So I think this movie's box office slump is twofold. One, I think a studio attempting to commercialize what Kevin Smith had done with Clerks smelled of corporate fiddling before we even started. And I think some audiences will have been put off by that. Smart audiences will have been put off by that. Trying to bottle and commercialize Clerks, a movie that was had an indie spirit, you know what I mean? Will have irked the movie fans, like the movie nerds, and then the more casual audience, the audience that it actually ended up being a huge hit for, they just found it later on DVD because they're just not engaged enough to be running out to that. So I don't think the movie was ahead of its time. I just don't think cinema was ever going to be its best foot forward in terms of the audience that would enjoy this movie. And I'm not saying it's necessarily just stoners. I'm just talking about generally sort of the that sort of quote unquote MTV generation, the sort of lethargic Daria types that are just in America particularly, that were too cool to be excited for anything, and therefore going to see a movie opening weekend is just not what you were gonna do. So yeah, I that's my feeling on it. I think the movie, because the movie ended up doing well on home video not that much later. You know what I mean? If the movie had found its audience 10 years later, I go, it was ahead of its time. But the movie found its audience pretty much immediately on home video, to my understanding, and then continued to do well on home video years and years after. Hence the reissuing during the anniversary that we'll talk about. So I think I don't think so personally, but I mean, having asked the question, do you think maybe there's some truth to that?
I think there's in some ways there's a spirit to the movie, but like you say, there aren't many, not every movie is American Pie in terms of it being an outright success right away, and having that sort of spirit to it. I think in terms of it's ahead of its time in terms of the way it handles pop culture. There are, they have to explain who Stan Lee is. They have to explain who the comic book characters they're talking about are. Brody is, essentially, Brody becomes the everyman by the time you reach now. Brody's Twitter in some respects, and he's playing it's Twitter in a movie, however many years ago, or X, whatever. So I think in that regard, maybe, but no more so in some regards than Clerks as well, maybe, but it's a bit more deep cut. So in that sense, from a pop culture point of view, maybe slightly. But there are other films doing that, and I don't think that would make a difference to the. That's not a comment in relation to the box office or anything. That's just an observation how, in some regards, maybe it is. Maybe it was ahead of its time.
Well, that's an interesting thought. American Pie is a really interesting reference because I think what's interesting about American Pie is American Pie has the raunchy comedy element that this kind of falls into. The long lineage of which, things like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Porky's, things like that. American Pie slots right into that and was financially massively successful. American Pie had like a $10 million budget and made like hundreds of millions, right? It was a very profitable movie. But I think the difference, and I think, so I would like to backtrack one thing I said, just because I think I would like to rephrase it. It's not that this movie is just a raunchy comedy. It's a raunchy comedy with a counterculture edge. Specifically, it's designed to be cynical and snarky and about pop culture, but also about these kids wasting their lives at malls, but also it hasn't got the commercial edge, and was never going to have the commercial edge a movie like American Pie has, which is like a bro sort of like college kid comedy, and those kids do go to the cinema and are excited to go to the cinema and enjoy, doing that. Whereas I think specifically the audience this movie was made for, or would enjoy this movie, whether it was made for them intentionally or not, were the kind of kids that were, like I said, sort of too cynical to actually put their money down and go see it. And that's assuming it was even marketed correctly as what it is. That's the other thing as well. Like, they probably marketed this movie a bit like, a bit like a Porky's, that kind of thing. And it was maybe in that sense that maybe it was too early. Then maybe if it had come out the same year as American Pie, it'd have done better. I don't know. But but yeah, I feel like that counterculture element of it is really what separates it from those kinds of movies. But yeah, it is a shame. I think it is unfortunate that we live in a world where, like, Kevin Smith releases Clerks, which is this sort of indie darling, and then a studio is like, within a year, like, let's bash out another one of these. You know what I mean? And I think that is unfortunate. I feel like it almost didn't have the time it needed to percolate for Smith, because he very much got immediately swept up in the Hollywood go, let's capitalize on your moment of fame, which is a real shame, because I think even this script is one of Kevin Smith's weakest by quite some way.
Yeah, and that was very much the pitch. He tells a story that he, on the night of Sundance when they sold Clerks, he basically met and started talking to Jim Jacks, and Jim Jacks was like, "What do you want to do next?" And he said, "A film called Mallrats." And Jim Jacks said, "What's the fit pitch? What's the film?" And he goes, "It's Clerks, but in a mall." And Jim Jacks was like, "I want that movie."
Yeah. And I get that.
Literally, like,
but I mean, look at the year it came out. It came out in 1995. Like, it when was Clerks at Sundance? 93, early 94.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, early 94, 93, whatever.
Yeah, so the turnover between Kevin Smith saying, "I'm going to do a movie that's Clerks in a mall," and a movie that's Clerks in a mall being in cinemas in 1995 is a very short time. And I think he really polished that Clerks script before he went to shoot it, because he knew it was his only chance. Whereas I think by the time he got to Mallrats, he was part of the studio system now. And he was like, "Well, I'll get another. I will bash this one out." And I really think what's evident rewatching this movie is the biggest difference to me between a Mallrats and a Clerks in terms of why a Clerks still mostly holds up as a really great movie. And it was something I believe we recommended when we rewatched. And this, which I actually don't necessarily think I'm going to be recommending unless you're a very particular kind of person, is the character stuff. I think all the character work in this movie is poorly thought out, not very well executed, not very clear. The characters seem to do arbitrary things to allow the comedy to happen. The comedy isn't naturally evolving from characters that are well drawn. And that is ultimately, if we're just doing broad thoughts, the difference, in my opinion, between Clerks and Mallrats, and why I think Mallrats has its fans, but Clerks is revered in a way that this movie never will be.
Was that your big takeaway, sort of rewatching it then? What was that experience like for you?
Well, my first initial takeaway from rewatching it, Chris, was irritation. So for listeners, Chris and I had some good fun the other night when I sat down to watch this movie. And if you remember, Chris, at the end of the last podcast, I said, I've seen it within the last sort of 5-10 years, I think. So I remember the movie. I've got a good sense of it. Imagine my surprise when I sit down and I put the movie on and I don't remember the opening scene at all. And it's long. It's involved. It's a whole thing. And I'm going, in my head, maybe I haven't seen this movie in dozens and dozens of years. Maybe I've not seen this movie since I was 15 because I don't remember a word of this. And I sit through the movie and I'm like, God, I don't remember it being this janky with some of these edits. And I'm like, I don't remember some of these scenes being so unnecessarily long. And I was ready to come here and be outraged at, who gave Kevin Smith a 2-hour movie to do this and it not needing it and it just being really laborious to watch. All the pacing of the jokes is hurt by how much each one is overdone. And I was going to come on here and absolutely rinse the movie for a lot of these things until I realized very quickly that the version I had watched, and I am not, by the way, from a Google search, the only person to have been caught out by this, but when the movie's been made available on streaming recently, they have put up the, I think, 10th anniversary extended edition of the movie, which restores the introduction that was so unpopular at test screenings, it forced them to entirely re-edit the movie from the ground up. Because the opening sequence of the original cut of this movie became a running joke. It became the "Are you open" of this movie. And it was cut and then had to be cut throughout the entire film. 30 minutes or 28 minutes, I think, of difference between the two cuts. And let me tell you, Chris, because I watched that version and was like, I can't, that's not the movie we're reviewing. It's just so different. I then had to watch the movie again. But the correct version, the version I remember opens with the Cousin Walter story. And I was like, oh, we're back. Okay, now I know exactly where we are. And I didn't figure it out until I mentioned to Chris the length, and it came up pretty quickly. And I was pretty annoyed. That's all I'm going to say.
You were very annoyed.
I was quite angry because not only did I have to watch the movie a second time, and I had to watch the movie a second time, I had sat down and made a point to watch it with Nadia because she remembered the movie fondly also. And we both came away from it being like, this was not good at all. And I tell you what, that 30 minutes of extra footage, it's amazing how much that can make a movie that is ostensibly, 75% the original cut. But it's amazing how adding that extra 25% makes it awful. Almost unbearable. And I've looked this up online, and I'm not the only person who feels this way. In fact, almost everyone feels this way. I've seen people describe it as, awful and unbearable and shit, and all the words I'm thinking of, just absolutely the absolute worst possible version of this movie. And it's incredible because it is the version that is most widely commercially available. If you go to a streaming site now, check the times, dear listener. Check if it's 2 hours or an hour and a half. If it's an hour and a half, you've got the right cut. That's all I'll say. So I had an interesting experience sitting down to rewatch this movie, and we'll talk about the differences in more detail in a little bit if you want. But for the movie itself, my main takeaway, once I saw the actual film, my main takeaway was that the character work is really poor. And it's poor across both cuts. Adding 30 minutes, unfortunately, that 30 minutes doesn't develop the characters further. It doesn't resolve the issue of there being really unclear character arcs. I mean, you know, love stories are kind of your thing, right? And this is a movie that's the elevator pitch is two guys get broken up by their girlfriends the same day, and then they all end up at the mall together. Hijinks ensue as they attempt to rekindle their romances, right? With love stories being at the center of this, like, do you believe any of the arguments they have? Are they anything other than just generic couple disagreements to sort of move the plot along? Do the characters actually learn anything relevant to that? And at the end, do you buy either love story rekindling? Because I can tell you right now, I don't. So I'll hand over to you to talk on that, because that was my big takeaway for sure. Unless you have a different big takeaway you want to get to first.
No, I do want to add that because you did it, I also then watched both versions of this movie.
I was pretty clear you shouldn't put yourself through that. You mentioned you might, and I said don't do it.
Yeah. And not only did I watch them both, mate, I watched them both one after the other.
Oh no! That's so much worse. I had I think 12 hours between my watches, I think. Oh man, that's rough. Yeah. I'm sorry, buddy. That sucks.
That's fine. It's fine.
Why did you do
I tell
that?
you now, and by the time this airs, this episode of Nothing But Static will be out. So feel free to go dig it out and listen to it. As much as I followed you there, I'm not watching 3 hours of Bluey, which is what you're saying you're going to do for the next Nothing But Static. But anyway.
Yeah, that's fine. I know. I'm watching nearly 6 hours of Bluey. That's my plan.
Yeah, 6 hours, sorry. But I know.
Mate, I've already knocked an hour and a half of Bluey down, mate. I'm on my way. I'm well on my way.
Well, good luck to you, Dan. I don't have the time. I think that maybe the TS story a little bit. That's probably the best handled of the two. But no, you don't really believe that anyone particularly learns anything or particularly goes on a journey. I think the Brody and his girlfriend one is worse because I mean, he doesn't even really seem to properly apologise, does he? He does to some degree, maybe. No. But the TS one is a bit because he's being really unreasonable. So that one is also very it's hard to defend that one because she's just fucking, helping out her dad. It's very. I think the angle that all of the arguments come from is wrong. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone particularly goes on a journey in this movie. It doesn't mean it's not enjoyable, but it's hard to defend against the criticism you've aimed at it for sure.
Well, especially because I think the thing that makes Clerks still work really well, even in the face of elements of it that haven't aged as well as others, is that relationship, and the characters. And the relatability of Dante's situation, right? Both characters really. That slacker friend that's given up already, and they've not even hit. They've not hit 20, and they've already decided their life is just going to be toiling in a video store, and they've made peace with that, and they're happy with their station in life, even if some people would deem that unacceptable. Whereas Dante has desires on bigger things, but won't get off the pot, so to speak, shutting off the pot as the movie goes. Those are both really clear, very relatable character places that I know people who've been in both those positions. I felt those positions myself. That is a really relatable human situation, and the two characters contrast each other really well, and they both learn something across that day in that store about each other and about that. And about accepting where you are in life, or actually, if you think you should, if you be doing something more, well, then go be doing that. Do you know what I mean? Either be happy with what you have, or reach for something rather than complaining all the time. And I think that's just so brilliantly explored in Clerks. that movie will stand the test of time. I think that movie will always, regardless of the humor shifting, taste shifting, there's going to always be a group of people who find that message intrinsically truthful to the human existence, to life, right? But this movie doesn't have anything to say about its characters. Like, they're slackers is about as much as the movie wants you to learn about either TS or Brody. Their girlfriends are mad at them. Okay. Because they're not doing much. Okay. They're not even in college yet, are they? Are they in college? Like, how old are these kids? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, the whole thing, the arguments feel hollow. It doesn't feel like it has anything to say about the people, and therefore, I think all that's left of this movie that's entertaining are the jokes and the hijinks, but they're only going to age worse with time. You know what I mean? So, like, that's kind of where I'm at with the film, because I just don't think any of the character stuff works at all. Like, neither of these characters, their arcs barely make sense. They're basically not existent. There's no growth for the characters. Yeah, it doesn't really work for me. I mean, we talked about, was it on the last Rewind review? We talked about Dan Harmon's story circle. Try applying. Was that the last Rewind review, or was that the last MBS? I don't remember.
I think it was the last Rewind review, wasn't it? It came up in context of Bill and Ted, I thought.
You're right, exactly, because it didn't have the last step change. Right, yeah, there you go. So I'm looking at this movie in that context. So it has the first step, right? They need something because something is wrong. Like, they've lost their girlfriends. They cross the threshold. They make the choice to try and get the girlfriends back. There's a road of trials. So again, there's a certain amount there at the start of the story circle. But then, just, series of hijinks. They then get the girls through hijinks, having learnt nothing, having not changed. So it's almost the exact same problem, actually, as Bill and Ted. I think if this movie just had, like, Brody admit that he could pay more attention. They try to do it in him saying, like, I'll make you breakfast tomorrow. But, like, he doesn't do anything other than be funny on that stage. He does nothing to win her back. TS's one is the more functional one, because at least with the TS one, you sort of go like, well, they shouldn't have really broken up in the first place. Their whole argument was like they were both kind of just being silly. Like, they just needed to sort of, like, figure it out. Like, so, but the movie makes a really good case for why Brody and Renee, have I got the character name right? I always mix up the
yeah, I think it's Renee. Yeah.
Why they should be together. Like, the movie does not make a good case for why Brody and Renee should be together at all. If anything, she makes a really good case for why she should never go near him again. She also shouldn't be with the Ben Affleck character, but, like, dating is a world of mistakes, right? But the movie makes such a strong case for those two never ever being even in a room together again, that you're like, when they get together at the end, you're like, I don't understand. You're both making a terrible mistake. So yeah, I don't know. That was a very long rant. I am sorry. I've hijacked the start of this podcast at that point, because that point really was the big criticism. There are obviously things we can talk about, whether it's funny, how does it age, the dialogue, the performances, how it's shot, all that stuff. But what was your experience with the extended cut then? Since we've covered the extended cut, but not, like, from your perspective, other than realizing you also suffered through it, and in maybe even worse circumstances than I did. How did you find the extended cut?
Oh, it's definitely worse. The intro is just incredibly unnecessary, like, and really convoluted. Yeah. It's like, it's so much cleaner in the theatrical version. Like, the fights, the reasoning, the sort of. It was really interesting watching them back, because I'm like, they must have reshot, because obviously they shot a new version of the intro, or did they have that in the bag just in case? Like, it's bizarre. I don't know how that sort of panned out.
I think they did a test screening and then I think they did a reshoot for just that one driveway scene. I think because you'll notice the guy, the TS's hair is longer, I think, in that opening scene. Jeremy London's hair is like a different length
Maybe
to the rest of the movie. It's like, I think it's significantly longer. So I think they did the test screening, realized the intro didn't work, but the intro is so inextricably tied to the setup for the movie that unpicking that really required them to just do one extra shoot that condensed the story. And I admit, in actually a very elegant way, because it does manage to hit the same general setup with one exception, which is this reason he's being hounded by people all movie, which is mostly cut now. It's actually a really elegant solution on the page.
Yeah, which for those that haven't seen it, the guy, her dad, who's in control of the game show, is trying to get money at the governor's ball, and TS accidentally disrupts the governor's balls because he's dressed as like a gunman from the olden days, and they think he's a sniper. And then news cameras follow him around. I mean, it really does feel like the work of someone drunk with power. It's just too much. It's way too much. Yeah. There's a lot of uncomfortable subplots that make it in still. There's an even more uncomfortable one in the cut version, in the extended cut, which is cut from mercifully cut from the theatrical version.
We'll come to it.
So yeah, it's definitely too long and it's just convoluted is the word I would use. It's unnecessarily convoluted. I think. I much more enjoyed the theatrical cut, and you know, like you, it's. I don't think it's as strong as Clerks. It's quite easy watching. I was very impressed, I have to say, with Jason Mewes and how far he'd sort of come as a performer
we'll talk
from
about
Clerks
that.
to Mallrats.
100%.
And I assume you've got some triv on that with, you know, how his role came to be in the movie. And if not, I can relate it. But I was really impressed with him. The cast in general are very strong in this. I don't think there's a bad performance.
Nope.
The Stan Lee cameo is brilliant. There's stuff to enjoy for sure.
Oh yeah, we'll get to the good stuff.
Yeah,
we'll get to the good stuff. There's plenty of that.
Yeah, the extended version is just beyond convoluted, basically.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, really, because it's not only is it more convoluted, but all of the scenes drag on in ways that really hurt the joke. Like, the theatrical cut is just so much punchier. Like, the extended cut... So I'll just pick on one scene to make this point. The scene when they arrive at the comic book store... and discover there's a line, so Brody can't get his comics, because you can't just get in, you've got to queue up to get in, and the reason is Stan Lee is in there, right? In the theatrical cut, he shows up, and immediately yeah, we were warned about you, get out of here. Tell him, Steve Dave, what's going on? Stan Lee is in there. Okay. Scene established, scene achieved. Tick. We know what's happened. In the extended cut... he's yelling at the guy. The other guy's yelling back. He cuts out of the queue. He cuts into the queue. It just goes on and on and on. And when you finally find out what it is, you're just couldn't we have gotten to this point sooner? Almost every scene just has unnecessary just shite wrapped around it. You know, it's that screenwriting thing of and you hear this advice a lot, from people who do writing, which is take your scene and probably take the beginning of it out and the end of it out, because the thing you want to say with the scene is probably in the middle, and you don't need to see them enter the cafe and sit down to have the conversation. You can just cut to them having the conversation. And while that is a very simple way of describing what can be a very complicated thing, because sometimes you can slip dialogue into the opening, that makes the whole scene... elaborate on character stuff and little ticks and things like that. It can be used for other stuff. Generally speaking, though, it's not bad advice. Get in later, get out sooner. Generally speaking, that is good advice, I think. And watching the extended cut was just an exercise in watching somebody not have any restraint. And that is exactly what it is, because it's an extended cut. They just let him cut the movie how he wanted. And maybe that's how it would have been originally, but it was 10 years removed. So there's an element of he's making it for the fans. He's just giving them the bonus footage. it's not meant to represent the movie. But the problem is the studio have now made it represent the movie, because when you go to rent Mallrats from Apple or on Amazon, you're more likely to get the extended cut first. That's what's going to show up, and that is the problem. If it's a double disc special release for fans that, as a curiosity, has the extended version on there as a thing that fans might be interested in seeing how it was originally supposed to be pieced together, that's lovely. Good. I'm glad that exists in the world. What's happened is something very different, and that's the problem. Because this is now going to stand as the version of the movie that most people will see, whether intentional or not, and it is so much worse. It does have a joke in it I like, though. In the opening scene, when he accidentally points his sort of prop gun towards the governor and her security starts shooting at TS, which is a very bold way to open the movie, having a gunfight. TS yells, "It's just a prop gun, it's not serious." And the guy on the ground goes, "I think he said he's serious." which did really make me laugh. So at least there's a good joke in the opening of the movie.
But it doesn't aid the character stuff either at all. Like, none of it's for that purpose. So
it's just more needless complications on an already thin journey. Like, the journey is not being... You're not filling in the lines with those scenes. You're just adding more diversions. So, like, the fact the final movie is an hour and by the way, this is the only movie of Kevin Smith's he did not cut himself. The only movie of Kevin Smith's he did not cut himself. And I will say, God bless this editor, because I honestly think if the movie had gone out in the way the 10th anniversary edition is, and there's no reason to say that is what would have happened, maybe Kevin Smith would have tightened up all the scenes in almost exactly the same way. I don't know. We'll never know, because that's not what happened. But just God bless this editor for bringing this into a tight 130 and knowing that, like, there's just no point in needless complications and, like, tightening up all these scenes. Because let me tell you, it's significantly better.
Which to his credit, Kevin Smith has done for most of his career as well. Like Clerks, like, he talks a lot now about how he likes movies to be, you know, a tight 90 minutes and stuff, and that's what Clerks 2 and Jay and Silent Bob Get Old were as well. So yeah, I think it's definitely needed. What's some of the things you like about the movie then? I'm sure, because there are definitely problematic areas, but let's dip in and out. What do you like?
I think it is mostly fairly funny. I think I don't think it's like laugh a minute. And I think the comedy in this is maybe aged a little less gracefully than Clerks, but maybe that's just an element of, like, the difficult second album, because a lot of it is the same sort of shtick from Clerks. Maybe that's part of it. But I do think it's quite a funny film, like, mostly. Like, I laughed, several times. I'll admit, actually, a lot of the time, Jay and Silent Bob were the highlight of the movie. Whenever they were on screen, I was usually laughing. One of my favourite jokes or bits in the whole movie is... when Brody doesn't want to admit who beat him up, so he tells them the Easter Bunny did it. So then Jay and Bob go beat up the Easter Bunny in front of a child, and then later on in the movie, there's this really brilliant throwaway line where someone says, "It's a dangerous mall to be holding a game show in, isn't it? I heard someone who assaulted the Easter Bunny earlier today." Which is such a great stray line referencing a thing that already happened. So yeah, I'd say the movie still is capable of making you chuckle, and it's not a 100% hit rate because of some of the stuff we'll talk about. But it's yeah, I thought it was a pretty funny film. How about you? What was sort of the things that made the film stand out and be entertaining for you?
I think it is very funny. I don't think it's very funny, but I think it is funny. I think the one kind of stray line that really made me laugh, and it's a similar callback thing, was Brody gives a speech, which in itself is quite entertaining, about the dangers. He gets obsessed with this kid not treating the escalators? Yeah, the escalators. The escalators with respect. And, like, in the next scene, the guys are going to get arrested, and then someone's like, "Wait, look over there, there's a kid trapped on the escalator," and they run off, and, like, that, amused me. So there was sort of stray lines that were quite funny. I thought Brody, the comic book culture stuff, I thought worked well. But like you say, it did in Clerks 2 as well. The Stan Lee cameo is fantastic. The Stan Lee cameo is brilliant. And I think, like I said earlier, just the I was taken in terms of things I liked. I was taken by how good the cast were. It's a very, very strong ensemble. And everyone is playing their part really well.
Yeah.
Like you, particularly Jay and Silent Bob, stand out. But to be honest with you, they all do. Like Joey Adams is very good. Ben Affleck's great. Like it's a really, Jason Lee's fantastic. The guy who plays TS is doing that part very well.
Yeah.
Like it's a really strong ensemble. And obviously as well, of course, I can't say his surname, but Ethan Stupake, I'm pretty sure I've pronounced his surname wrong.
I want to say Suppley?
Suppley, yeah, that's it, I think. As the artwork obsessed William, obsessed with the sailboat. That was very good as well.
I think you'll find Chris, it's a schooner.
Yeah, that was all. He's brilliant in this, and that subplot was very entertaining.
Yeah,
it doesn't. I think
it's funny. Doesn't don't you think that Silent Bob has a better arc than our leads in the with the Star Wars thing, and that pays off quite funnily with him.
Yeah, and it doesn't. Do you think it build? I guess it does build. Like the game show is inserted throughout and stuff, but it just, I don't know, it almost feels like it doesn't really. I suppose it does build to this grand moment. I think even the theatrical cut, it just needs the bolts tightened a bit, I think. And like you say, maybe the character arc stuff fleshed out a bit, because there's some really good stuff in there, but like the detour to the other mall is just so unnecessary, and not just because a woman having two nipples isn't particularly entertaining, but just in general, this sort of side quest, you'd think it'd be fun to see, oh, well, this is what, like, a more downbeat mall looks like. But it's just throughout the movie, there's a lot of scenes where you're like, you could take that out and put something more in there, I think, potentially, like, more character-driven, than, them seeing a three-nippled psychic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that scene because I think the scene is good comedically, because the premise of that scene is that Jason Lee can't wait to go in. So Jason Lee Brody can't wait to go in, and TS thinks it's a big crock of shite, and then TS really buys, when she starts speaking, that she's a real psychic, and doesn't even notice that she's got a third nipple because he's just not engaged with that element of it. He's just really hooked on her every word. And Jason Lee goes from being really excited about to being quite grossed out. And I think just from a comedic perspective, that's a funny premise for a scene, to have the characters flip the roles once it actually gets going. But you're right, it doesn't teach us anything about them.
In terms of throwaway lines, I did like when he's like, "You've got a third nipple," and Brody's like, "It's right there, man."
Yeah. It's great. And I like when he tells her, like, you can drop the act, and she drops the mystical accent and goes to her normal one. Like, that's a really fun performance. I'm not sure who the lady is that plays her. The name is probably in here, right? Priscilla Barnes plays Ivana, according to this. So yeah, she does a really good job. She's very funny in that role. But like, so I don't mind that scene from a comedic perspective. But you're right. The trip to the other mall should really be the lowest point. The characters learning something about themselves to then come back to fight. Maybe you still do that scene, but actually have her say something a bit more valuable in that, other than just you need to talk to her. Because that's ultimately what he gets out of that, right? TS comes out of the meeting with the psychic having gone like, yeah, we just need to talk about it. Which is technically true. It's not true. It's just a very shallow thing to be doing. Couldn't we have her say something more that speaks more to his character and makes him maybe realize the error of his ways, maybe that he was being selfish, and leads him to going on stage and admitting that. And then it's at least cleaner. And it, because because he was being a little selfish. Although I think the worst one is, and I don't think you can resolve that with a psychic, is obviously Brody and Renee, which is just like these two people are just fundamentally incompatible with each other, and I don't know why I'm supposed to be. I don't know why the movie wants me to be on the side of the idea that they got together and stayed together. I don't know. Like, if anything, the conclusion to that story should literally be, we're not right for each other, and that's okay.
Yeah, well, he seems to. There are moments where both leads have more chemistry with Joey Adams' character than their own girlfriends.
Yeah, is it? That made me wonder. Is Joey Lauren Adams just like? Is she just like?
Yeah, Joey Lauren Adams. Sorry.
Is she just got like that much chemistry with everyone because she's that talented? Because you're right, she definitely does.
Yeah, maybe. And there were points where I was like, is this where this is going? I don't remember that. And it doesn't go there because it isn't where that's going. Yeah, it's weird.
She's an extremely likable performer. I rate Joey Lauren Adams. I think she's good in pretty much everything I've ever seen her in. I think, because for those who don't remember her role in this, she plays basically somebody who used to go out with TS that now sees the value in him, so to speak. That she didn't see when she was younger and a bit more precocious, and she, sort of says that to Brandy, which is his love interest, TS's love interest, and sort of points out that he's more of a catch than you maybe think. But okay, so is Brandy's arc seeing the value in TS that she didn't see before? Because if that's the case, why does him trashing her dad's game show prove that he has more value? That maybe she needs to reconsider it. If what she learns from her conversation with Joey Lauren Adams is that maybe he's more of a catch than she initially thought, I don't know how he proves that in his actions at the end of this movie.
Well, that's why I think it's coming at it from the wrong angle, because I'd need to look at the script or rewatch the scene. But doesn't he, in a way, convince her that he was right about her always sort of bowing to the pressures from other people, in this instance her dad, to do this? And he sort of says, well, I was going to ask you to marry me, and that's kind of what wins her over, which, again, I just feel like is coming at it from the wrong angle.
Yes, well, especially in the extended cut, where they have a scene where he admits to her earlier in the movie he was going to propose to her, and she's like, you dick. Like, why would you bring that up now while I'm breaking up with you? It's like a shitty thing that he does. And then at the end of that cut, he does it again, and she's on board with it suddenly. It's weird.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And I think that's the wrong angle. I think the angle is surely, look, you were just trying to help out your dad. I realise that now. I was a dick. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. All right, there's two more things, I think. Well, three more things we need to quickly cover before we get into any other notes or any little details. But very quickly, I don't think it's shot well. Look, Kevin Smith has talked about this. He's not the most visual director. He shoots a lot of things like a play. This movie is not shot well. There are weird shot choices that just don't really communicate the physicality, the space of things. Just awkward, weird cut-ins. It's bizarre. Some of the angles chosen are strange. Some of the ways the scenes are pieced together is odd. I think the editor does a really admirable job making it feel more dynamic than it is. But I don't think it's... Look, he admits it's not his strong suit. No reason to harp on it, but it is also true of this movie. I think it was easier to get away with in Clerks, where there was such a small amount of space that it almost had to be shot like a play, because otherwise, you can't dynamically move a camera around like that. But some of the shot choices in this movie do not help tell the story. Put it that way. I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. So, some of it, the way the Jay and Silent Bob action pieces are shot is all right. It's particularly I honestly think they stand out as some of the worst stuff. It's pieced together really awkwardly. There's never a sense of where they all are. I suppose the one where I tell you the one that I think is shot quite well, actually, or at least functionally, is when Bob's gonna clock LaForge with the sock, and the kid rolls the truck. All of those shots sort of communicate pretty cleanly what's physically happening. So that one's fine. That one works well enough. But the other ones, particularly his homage to Batman and the grapple hook escape. There are some shots within that are individually good looking, like the shot looking down on them as Bob puts it up. But that shot is, I believe, a mimic of the angle Tim Burton chose to shoot the Batman scene. So that shot only is there because he's referencing the scene from Tim Burton's Batman. Otherwise, that is one of the most dynamic shots in the entire movie, and it almost stands out for that reason. But even that's cut together kind of awkwardly because of the different angles they have, where it's like the police step into the exact framing of the shot they were just in. Like, I don't know. It is what it is. I don't think it's like crazy bad where it's actually going to like negatively affect the movie, but it's not good. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair for sure.
Yeah. The other thing I want to talk about before we get to the problematic stuff, and there's a lot of that, the dialogue. I found this more of a problem in the extended cut because the scenes go on longer, but this overly verbose sort of view askew style of dialogue starts to sound ridiculous the longer the scenes go on. So it's not as bad in the theatrical cut, but I will say it's still not great. Characters, why? What's that from the Office? Why say many words when few do? These characters will make a simple point in 1,000 words. It's like they all woke up that morning and swallowed a thesaurus. And it doesn't feel natural. It often doesn't feel particularly funny. In Clerks, it was like, oh, these two characters speak that way. But when everyone speaks that way, and it's such a large cast, it feels weird. And it's not bad dialogue, but in a movie with this pace, you start noticing the actors cramming long sentences into short spaces to make it feel natural. And they're doing their best with it, but it isn't the best. It isn't his best work, I don't think. The dialogue, it needs some refining, some trimming.
Yeah, I think, and it's difficult though, isn't it? Because I think 20 years ago, that's probably what young Dan would have been praising because it's unique, I guess, because it's kind of it's got a distinctive Kevin Smith voice, like from the get-go in the theatrical cut, from the get-go, like when when he tells the uncle story, you just in your mind go, this is a Kevin Smith film. I know what I'm in for. I know what a Kevin Smith film looks like. So yeah, I think his dialogue is always an interesting point in that regard.
Well, yes, but I think one of the things that maybe young Dan learned and ignored, and older Dan is realizing there was a lot of truth to this, is you can't have all your characters sound the same, and everyone in this movie talks the same. And at a certain point, the author is clearly the one speaking for everyone, rather than each character having their own distinct way of speaking. And I think in Clerks, because it's a smaller cast, you get away with it. But once you've got more than just the two guys, the two girls, and Jay and Bob, you've got a much more extended cast, and everyone is talking like that. It starts just becoming...
There is also I don't think there are... Brody and TS are nowhere near... Yes, it's a smaller cast and there's less people, but TS and Brody are nowhere near as distinct from each other as Dante and Randall are. in Clerks. Like all the characters in, I agree with you. They all sound similar, but they're also very distinct. Like you could name a line of dialogue that doesn't exist in the Clerks film and say which character of the main, 6, let's say, says this, and probably guess. Whereas I think with this, you could be like, well, it could be any of them.
I don't actually, I think I'm not sure that's true. I think only from what side of the so if you take a line of dialogue that's not specifically giving away the character's perspective, so just a practical piece of them talking, I don't think it will be that possible. So the thing with Clerks is they're often talking about their opinions on things. So, and you know where Randall stands on the world, and you know where Dante stands on the world. But I actually think in that weirdly sort of Kevin Smith verbose way, if you had the characters talking about a subject that didn't sort of give away their position, I'm not sure you would be able to tell the difference between Dante and Randall, if I'm being honest.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, fair enough.
Because I think they both very much are they both live in their characters' perspectives very much, so they are distinct from each other. You're right. But I think if we're just talking about literally the way their dialogue is structured, I think they talk very similarly.
Yeah, okay. That's a fair comment. Yeah.
And I think that lives through this movie too, where every character has that same, just needlessly verbose dialogue. And thinking back to Clerks, I think also the people coming into the store end up talking like that as well. Like, but they only ever get one line or two, so you sort of like let it go. Like, because it's just fine, like whatever. But yeah, there's just something about Kevin Smith dialogue where it all just sounds like Kevin Smith dialogue, and I think at a certain point all the characters start to sound like each other. They all have their own perspectives and character arcs and what have you, but in terms of how they're phrasing things, they all just start to sound like the same. And I think that is something I'm noticing more as an adult. And again, for someone who prides himself on the dialogue and gets a lot of praise for his dialogue, I do think it's an interesting way for his characters to talk, and it certainly sets his movie apart from other films of the era and genre. But it comes with a flaw, I think. Oh, God. I've become my screenwriting teachers. Ugh, gross.
No, I think that's all fair. Shall we get into the problems?
Let's see. I'll tell you what I've done. I've just pulled up. I've just curiosity. I just pulled up the Clerks script. I'm trying, because the problem is we know the movie so well. I don't think they'd be just because they're lines of dialogue from the movie. Like,
yeah, I mean, I've already acknowledged you've got a good point, Dan. There's no need to.
This is more curiosity than I'm not trying to make a like. I'm just this is me just like trying to like an experiment to sort of I've posited my theory. Now I kind of want to test it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, unfortunately, a lot of this dialogue again is just so based in their perspective. Okay, that's what high school's all about: algebra, bad lunch, and infidelity.
I assume that's Randall.
That's Dante.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, and I feel there's something about the way he speaks. Well, I'd be, if we had more time, I would go through a bunch of these. I'd be curious, but we'll leave it at that. But let's scoot it along. Yeah, let's talk about the stuff that doesn't work. I don't even know where to start with this. Let's just deal with Trish first of all. Like that's the big one for me.
God.
Let's just get this out of the way.
Oh God.
There is a character in the movie who is. Sorry, I'm gonna set myself up for this. Take a deep breath. Let it out. There's a character in this movie called Trish. Trish has been given a big advance to write a book on the modern male sex drive, and is sleeping with lots of different men from lots of different age groups and categories in order to collect data for this book. On its own, bit weird, but consenting adults do what consenting adults do, right? Except the movie makes it extremely clear and reiterates this point ad nauseum that she is 15. It is deeply shitty. And it feels like it was included, speculation, it feels like it was included so at the end of the movie you could have Ben Affleck's character being arrested. But what about all of the other men she's slept with? How is this?
What about the fact that Brody is hitting on her throughout the movie?
Yeah. Or offers TS to sleep with her at one point as a sort of joke, but also he's like, yeah, she's doing research on sex. You should. It's a problem. It's like a half-baked idea mixed with another half-baked idea. And it's deeply uncomfortable. It doesn't work. Everyone deserves better in this scenario.
It's not great.
It's not funny. It's not appropriate. It doesn't age well, but I don't even think it aged well at the time. I only think I genuinely, hand on heart, believe the reason they got away with this at the time is quite simply that most of the audience for this movie were probably 15, 16, and therefore didn't understand that was not good. Because they were like, oh, 15, that's a person that's my age. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. Really leery. And even worse in the extended cut, because then they get her together with LaForge, the security guard. There's still a hint of that in the cut, because he gives her the kiss on the forehead at the end. But that could just be like a protective parent thing. You might be able to imply, oh, that's her dad. Like maybe the whole time he was her dad. You know, you could look at it like that without the scene that is cut of her seducing him or sort of propositioning him. It's bad. It's really bad. I don't know what to say other than that. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything to add on Trish?
No, the Trish thing is very uncomfortable throughout the whole movie.
Like the back of a Volkswagen?
It doesn't add anything to the film. It doesn't. Sorry, sorry. I tried to ignore it, but like I couldn't work out. That feels oddly inappropriate. Yes, I guess. Like I've never been in the back of a Volkswagen. Are they particularly uncomfortable? It's one of those things where you said something was uncomfortable, and I just had to. I did the joke from the movie, so I couldn't resist. Did they say that in the movie? I don't remember that joke from the movie.
Wait, but it's not just in the movie. It's in the movie like 4 times. It's like a repeat joke. It's like a running gag, isn't it? Because Ben Affleck says to TS to Brody he's gonna sleep with his girlfriend in an uncomfortable place.
Oh yes,
and he goes in the back of a Volkswagen, and then like that comes up like 3 or 4 more times.
Yeah, I do remember now. Good callback then. That's good.
I think it would have been better if you'd have remembered it, which is,
yeah, that's fair. It's just uncomfortable, and it's not needed. It's not necessary at all. Like you say, you just go, is this only in it for the Ben Affleck stuff? But then that's worse, because how can you morally, at the end of the movie, in the extended cut in particular, have one character arrested for it and then literally see and sort of celebrate another character doing that? So yeah, it's not good, and nor is to tick some of the others off.
Yeah,
nor is some of the language used in it and some of the slang terms used in it are particularly bad, and the frequent showing of Joey Lauren Adams topless just for the sake of it is also not good at all.
Yeah, I think I it's so needless. You know, because I had to see the movie twice, I kept an eye out the second time for when they cut in on Joey Lauren Adams and when the moment of action occurs. That's the premise of the scene, right? So for those who don't remember, there's a running gag where Silent Bob is attempting to break down the stage for the game show to stop it from happening across the movie. And it is one of the funniest sequences in the movie. They have these really fun, like drawings, schematics of the plan. You know, Jay on absolute top form as he describes the plan, being very, very funny. In fact, the only character in the entire movie that doesn't talk like and one of the other characters in the movie is Jay, and that's because I assume Jay just sort of jays through his lines. you know.
Well, I think your
Well,
theory is what you said earlier is the theory on that. All of the characters are the writer's voice, except Jay, who, because Jay is based on the real person,
yes.
Jay, he wrote Jay in Jay's voice.
Yeah, but I do think, from my understanding, he was very bad at learning lines and would often just sort of like... Because it wasn't until Dogma that he really did memorize a script, because Kevin Smith is very specific about that story. So my impression has always been he sort of mildly improvised around the dialogue he was given anyway. But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Kevin Smith will have written to his existing voice because he was just a friend of his. But the premise is that he keeps accidentally crashing into changing rooms where Jory Lauren Adams is changing. And on the second viewing, I kept an eye out for what moment does he crash in to the room. And by the time he crashes into the room, she is clothed. Or at least covered, because she's in the midst of putting on a thing. It would have been easier. I mean, look, I'm not saying she didn't have, like, approval of this and just went, yeah, that's fine, I'm comfortable and happy with this, and it was done on a safe set that everyone was happy and comfortable with it in. And, you know, all the classic raunchy comedies of the 80s had, to some degree, a certain amount of nudity, you know. I'm trying to think of like a good one that Kevin Smith probably will have cited. Oh yeah, he loves Fast Times. Fast Times is a big movie for him. That obviously has a very famous scene where an actress is nude in a fantasy sequence, or topless, I think. So I get it, and I think that's maybe what he was trying to invoke. But when you get into the edit of the footage that he actually has, the moment Silent Bob's head bursts through into that changing room, she's already covered. So it wouldn't have been much to just start that scene slightly later and save her that indignity. But, you know, maybe that's me assuming. Maybe she was very happy with it and didn't mind at all and thought it was funny and thought it made the scene funnier. And everyone was okay with it, and that's, you know, whatever then in that case. But it can't not feel at least a little leery, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it does. It does definitely feel leery when you watch
and
it.
And needless, I think, is the main takeaway. I think it doesn't feel necessary to the scene. So there's a bunch of language I don't care for, as you pointed out, and there's a weird gay panic thing, but the movie sort of hangs a hat on that. That I can't figure out whether I'm okay with or not. So we've talked a lot about how movies from the 90s have gay panic jokes where it's like somebody's like, "Oh, I'm not gay," you know. And we Dumb and Dumber was, I think, the cleanest example of that, where it was full of like stuff like that, where it's like, "Oh, being gay, that's gross." This movie sort of like has a character do that, but then it has another character point out that he's doing that and then call him a homophobe. And, like, there's a part of me that's like, I can't tell whose side the movie is on in this scenario. Because, like, which one is the joke and which one is the honest opinion? I can't figure it out. Like, it's very unusual the way it's structured. I don't want to go into too much more detail about it, but, like, because I'd have to describe the entire exchange. But, yeah, weird. Really weird.
Yeah, it feels very weird, for sure. And like you, I can't quite work out the stance on it in a way.
Yeah, because like the character that points out the homophobia is getting laughs from doing that. So you're like, oh, is he just being funny, or does he genuinely feel that way? Whose perspective is what here? Yeah, I found that strange. It was a bit confused. So yeah, does it age well? No, it doesn't. And I guess that leads us into the question of like, do we recommend it? Cool. Unless you're a big Kevin Smith fan, maybe not. I think no. I don't know. How do you feel?
Yeah, because I don't want to do the usual. If you're a fan of teen comedies, but I think you have to. I don't know what the. Yeah, and if you're a Kevin Smith fan, you've seen it. Like, do you know what I mean? Your mind is made up on it. There's a lot of. I didn't dis. I think because I knew what was coming with that. We even hinted at it at the end of last week's episode. You know, you said, "Oh, I'm confident on this," and I'm like, "There's some stuff that's not going to hold up." Like, so
yes.
I enjoyed rewatching it, but I think because I knew they were coming, so it didn't necessarily ruin it for me because I went, well, knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, but to be honest, if it was just the stuff that aged poorly, but the rest of the movie worked well, I'd be like, yeah, this is still worth checking out. You've got to get past the aged poorly stuff, but there's still a really good character arc. What's really surprising to me is that I wasn't able to make up for that stuff. Because obviously a comedy from the 90s is going to have some stuff in it that I'm going to go, oh yeah, that doesn't really work with a modern eye. I think, find me a comedy from the 90s that doesn't have that problem to some degree, right? There aren't going to be many. The bigger issue, the reason I'm not recommending it, and the thing that's really surprised me, is the story doesn't work. And that's shocking from the guy that's always been like, hey, I'm not the best at shooting movies, but I do know how to write them. You know, from that guy, that's what's really shocking. I think it may very well be one of his worst movies in terms of the script. And that is surprising. I wasn't expecting to come back saying that. Like, I'd seen it within recent years enough that I'd gone, yeah, I remember enjoying it last time I saw it, and I think I probably just watched it casually without really thinking about it too much, let the jokes wash over me. The Easter Bunny thing's kind of funny, you know. The stink palm, that's kind of gross in a way that's unneeded but kind of funny. I guess, like, you know, the kid on the escalator callback is really fun. Like, you know, great. And I got out and I didn't really think about it again. Sitting down and watching it with a critical eye, there's so little to latch onto here as being making this worth revisiting, and that's what was really shocking to me. The performances are incredible. Michael Rooker is unhinged. Jason Mewes is just way more confident in this movie, which I think really makes it good. We'll talk about why maybe in a minute. It's funny occasionally, but not at enough of a rate to make up for the stuff that ages poorly, the lack of character arcs, love stories that don't make any sense. Yeah, what a shame. what a shame. Disappointed.
Yeah, I think objectively, I think I have to fall on not recommend, but I can see myself watching it again just as an interesting piece of Kevin Smith history. So, or in like the lead up to another View Askew movie, you know. So, but yeah, if you're talking like, you know, would I go into work tomorrow and say to someone, you should really check out Mallrats? No, I probably wouldn't. No.
Yeah. Also, Steve Ditko erasure, not acceptable. Stanley, as always, taking full credit for inventing Spider-Man when he just said, oh, there could be a Spider-Man, and then letting Steve Ditko create the character's design, powers, backstory, just general circumstances. Like, Spider-Man was invented by Steve Ditko, and I think Stanley got away for way too long running around claiming he basically invented Spider-Man. So more Steve Ditko erasure here. Par for the course is Stanley, but that can fuck off.
You brought up, if we're just making sort of comments, you brought up Michael Brooker. We didn't shout him out enough earlier. I think he is also on the names, giving the brilliant performances.
Absolutely unhinged. Like, I've never seen somebody commit to a role so thin with such gusto.
Yeah, and just because we you know retrospectively know it led to a whole podcast titled it. Tell him Steve Dave did make me smile.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. If we're doing just like random little things, obviously all the references to the wider View Askew universe is fun. Like Rick Darris comes up. Obviously the movie, the theatrical cut opens by linking the Julie Dwyer pool death to from Clerks to Mallrats, which kind of makes it like, I think this might be set the same day in that case, or the day before. because they go to the funeral in Clerks, but she died yesterday from the perspective of Mallrats. So this is kind of like either a prequel or a sidequel where it's actually happening around the same time. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, my reading of that was it's happening at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because in the extended cut,
yes,
there's even a shot of
the quick stop
of the store, of
yes,
the convenience store.
Yeah, but it doesn't have the "I assure you we're open." So that made me think maybe it's a day before, because maybe like she dies one day.
I think it is the day before. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if Julie Dwyer dies, Mallrats happens the next day. Her funeral is the day after. That's the day of Clerks. So this technically would make it a prequel, I guess. I will say as well, and this is, it's an extended cut. So the extended cut is edited horribly. There are a bunch of weird jump cuts that, if you're watching closely, really stand out. But then again, the theatrical cut also has some weird ADR dialogue where they've removed references to the shooting plot. So you can't win, really. There's no perfect cut of this movie in that sense. I made a note of the line, "No libido to attack," because that made me laugh. Let's see. Do I have any other notes? Oh, I do. One element of the Stan Lee thing I really enjoy, by the way, is the reveal that TS put him up to it. That's very funny.
Say that again.
The reveal that TS put Stan Lee up to talking to Brody about love.
Oh yeah, have you got the truth behind that?
No, I've got truth about what. So Stan Lee wasn't going to be in the movie, and Kevin Smith had written like a fictional comic book creator into the movie. But then Stan Lee managed to finagle a Stan Lee appearance. I don't know anything about. Is there specifics to that?
Yeah, so basically Stan Lee read the part and it didn't have that bonus scene. And then Stan Lee spoke to Kevin and was like, "Look, I can't be talking about the girl that got away when I have the girl that didn't get away." And and again, I'm probably paraphrasing or saying it wrong, but basically his point was he was so in love with his wife, he didn't want to even suggest on film that there was another girl out there that he was pining for. But Stan Lee then said, "But I was thinking, what about if we add this?" And then Stan Lee pitched the scene where it's revealed that he was just making it up.
Right.
And Kevin Smith was like, "Yeah, that sounds great. Whatever you want to do." But the way Kevin Smith tells the story is when he got to know Stan Lee a little bit better, he's not entirely sure that wasn't Stan Lee just trying to extend his part.
Well, I mean, extend the part or improve the script. Because let me tell you, right, as I was watching that scene, I'd forgotten the reveal that TS put him up to it. And I said to Nadia, this is some of the clunkiest dialogue. The way he keeps shoehorning in love, it's awkward, it doesn't quite fit. I don't know. I'm not, and then they reveal that and I went, oh, it's intentional. It's clunky because he's forcing it because he's been paid to force it.
And look, we don't know that first scene played out exactly the way it plays out now that the second scene was added. But yeah, certainly the notion of coming back was apparently Stan Lee, because Stan Lee didn't want to imply that there was another girl out there that wasn't his wife.
Right. That's fun. That's very sweet and very very interesting. Very quickly, another note I made. The police in the extended cut don't just pull up to the building and go in as you would. One of them rappels down on a rope really needlessly, and it is both one of the silliest and funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm actually a little sad it's not in the final cut of the movie because it is so absurd and so needless. Yeah. And the very last...
It's very slapstick in this movie, and that that doesn't necessarily not work.
Yeah, but what I noted was the slapstick was very much reserved for Jay and Bob, I found. And that, I think, works really well. But it is really interesting that a lot of the slapstick comedy is Jay and Bob stuff, and there's almost none of that anywhere else in the movie. Like, if you remove Jay and Bob from this movie, there's almost no slapstick comedy left.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that was it. No, that's not even a criticism, just a weird observation of that they're the sort of leaders of that plotting. Okay. Dante is sort of back, but not. We haven't talked about this. My last note before we do Trev Brian O'Halloran does get a role in this movie. He plays Gil Hicks. Obviously, Dante is called Dante Hicks. When I was younger, I believed that meant he was like his brother, but Kevin Smith has jokingly referred to him as his identical cousin, which is a really funny idea.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. And he played the part very well.
He's
as well.
great in this movie. It's such a fun role. Such a fun role. To let him be the punching bag for like another Randall in Brody. Oh, yes, please. That's just great. Yeah. I will also say, but
it's really well done.
I think later in these movies, there's a news broadcast, and it's like Jim Hicks as well, and it's also played by Brian O'Halloran. So I like the idea that the Hicks family line is just full of identical cousins, just really strong genes in the Hicks, household, and family. Okay, there you go. So should we do Triv?
Yeah, man. Let's triv it up.
I'll give you some trivia. So weirdly, there was like a lot of Kevin Smith talks a lot, and therefore there are lots of things known about this movie. But actually, like sort of the story of this movie has been so told and so covered. Like even the trivia section on IMDb just sort of is more about like little funny details and alternate castings and stuff. So we'll stick to that, I think. If you want to know more about how this movie came to be, I mean, Chris kind of told the story at the top of the podcast anyway of how this movie came to be. It was in the wake of the success of Clerks. So, So Universal were the guys that stepped in to put this movie together. And they had some different ideas for casting on a few fronts. Universal wanted either Mike Myers, Adam Sandler, or Chris Farley to play Brody. Look, Universal, I feel you. Big star, probably would have made a lot more money. Like a lot more money. I don't think it would have made a better movie, though. I don't think any of those guys are right for Brody.
No, well, Mike Myers in particular was too young to do Wayne's World.
Yeah, do you mean too old? I assume
too old to do. Yeah, too old to do Wayne's World.
Yeah, agreed. And Adam Sandler, Chris Farley. I mean, Chris Farley maybe. Truthfully, but I think the problem with Chris Farley, and this is said with all of the love in the world, I think the problem you have with Chris Farley playing Brody is he unfortunately would have fit into the comic book guy stereotype because of his appearance. And again, I mean that with all the absolute love in the world. And I just think like The Simpsons was already doing that. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't need another snarky comic book sort of like guy that's like that sort of size and like that sort of appearance. I think it's too much playing into the existing stereotype rather than letting Chris Farley just be the brilliant physical comedian he is. That's the other thing. Brody is not a physically... I'm not saying Chris Farley couldn't have delivered these lines brilliantly because he is an incredible performer, but he had a physicality to him. You know, we've all seen the masterpiece that is Beverly Hills Ninja. His physical comedy is top tier. You cannot give him a role of guy walking around a mall holding a cup, talking. You know, that's just, it doesn't work. Universal had an alternate casting for TS as well, which is maybe not as bad because I think TS is a slightly less specific role. But it is still, I think, maybe worse than what we got. They wanted Ethan Hawke to play TS. I like Ethan Hawke, but I think that could have worked. But I'm glad we got Jeremy London.
There was a quote so Kevin Smith talked about that. And he said to a paper, he went, Ethan Hawke, the guy's like 40, and apparently when Kevin Smith saw that in print, the paper had added a brackets after it, so it said Smith said Ethan Hawke's like 40 brackets. Ethan Hawke is 30. And those might not be the exact ages, but basically the notion was Kevin Smith had added 10 years to Ethan Hawke.
I do think Ethan Hawke's probably a little too old for the role as well, but yeah, it's, you know, you can make that work.
Yeah, well,
in a world where Tobey Maguire played high schooler, I think we're, you know, I think it's okay. You can get away with it.
Yeah, I think I think his thinking was that Ethan Hawke had been around for so long that people thought of him as older.
Yeah, for sure. And that's nothing against Ethan Hawke. He's obviously very, very talented. But yeah, I'm glad we got what we got. A really interesting prospect was Steve Zahn apparently auditioned for Brody. And as much as I love Jason Lee, I do also love Steve Zahn and think that would have potentially... Like, if I'm portal gunning to any of the dimensions of alternate castings for this movie, I kind of do want to see the Steve Zahn version of Brody out of curiosity. See what he would have done with it. And I love Jason Lee. And he's perfect for that role, but very interesting. Mark Wahlberg was also considered for Brody at one point, and Leonardo DiCaprio for TS. Universal were looking to throw a bunch of money at this, weren't they? Because even then, I think both of those guys were probably
wasn't spent. Yeah, it's mad how much they wanted to spend and clearly didn't spend.
Yeah. They were willing to spend it on a star because they thought that would bring in tickets. They weren't willing to spend it on, like, the production. Smith's first choice to play Svenning was William Atherton, but Atherton chose not to do it because the film was aimed at a teenage audience and he just wanted to do something aimed more at that audience. Fair enough. Word is that Jennifer Love Hewitt tried out for the role of Trish. And Heather Graham auditioned for our unnamed role in this one. Unclear which of the sort of female leads she auditioned for, but she apparently did. Parker Posey was also considered for Gwen, which is Joey Lauren Adams' role. And this is the interesting one, just because I thought this was like, what a weird thing to have talked about publicly. And this is the thing about Kevin Smith. When you go to the trivia of a Kevin Smith movie, you always go like, on any other movie, even when this sort of stuff happens, everyone is too polite and too Hollywood to talk about it publicly. But Kevin Smith just is honest about this shit. And it's to his both detriment and my intrigue. Like, so apparently he met...
Yeah, I think he's obviously calmed down on that now. But yeah, certainly back in the day, he absolutely was that.
Yeah. For sure. Which made him a bit of a liability, I guess, in Hollywood. Like, you'd be careful working with him because you knew he would tell the stories. So apparently the casting director, Kevin, and Scott Mosier all sat down with Reese Witherspoon about this movie. But they were so... Like, they did not enjoy the meeting, basically. It does not sound like they got on very well with Reese Witherspoon. And they told the casting director not even to bother bringing her in for an audition.
Well, so he talked about that in that interview. So I'd never heard of this movie, but she said to him apparently, "Oh, I kind of did a convenience store movie as well, SFW," which I've never heard of that film. But basically, Kevin Smith did not feel that film and Clerks were alike, and that put her off on a really bad foot, apparently.
Oh, well, I mean, look, okay, just, you know, I think this speaks to, like, where Kevin Smith was at this point, and I don't think it speaks to where Kevin Smith is now. But if that's the reason, that's a bit of a dick move. Because at the end of the day, right, whether you agree with that or not, she's just trying to, like... She's just trying to relate. Like, she's just trying to be like, oh, you know, I've done similar stuff. Or, you know, like, she's just trying to be polite. And I've just Googled
she's trying to make conversation.
Yeah, she's just trying to make conversation. It's fine. Yeah, I've just looked at that movie. I've never heard of that movie either. SFW. Comedy drama from 1994. Same year as Clerks, funnily enough. Yeah, I can see why he didn't think this was similar. A misanthropic teenager gains sudden unwanted celebrity status after he's taken hostage by terrorists. Sure. Yeah. So this is the trivia we alluded to earlier. So the studio were very nervous about Jason Mewes continuing to play Jay. They almost replaced him with Seth Green. Kevin insisted, obviously, that Mewes continue to play Jay, but the studio made Smith do auditions for the role. In the end, everyone agreed that they would let Mewes stay in the role as long as Seth Green was on call and ready to fly out to Minnesota at any moment should Jay not perform. and I think some people attribute his, shift in confidence and performance in this movie up being to the fear of Seth Green lurking in the curtains behind him, waiting to take the role from him, which might be the reason. But obviously, I wouldn't want to detract from the fact he does just give a great performance in this movie. But I do think it's very funny that Seth Green is just waiting in the wings the whole time.
Well, fair play to him, because apparently it went as far as the studio eventually said to Smith, "Okay, if you're determined to cast him, we understand why, but this is what you got to do. You got to fly him out on your own money, and we're not going to pay for his accommodation either. So if you want him to stay in your room, he can stay in your room, but we're not going to pay him anything. And we want to see the first day's filming with him rushes. And if we watch the rushes and don't like it, then Seth's in and he's out." And back at this point, that involved FedExing the tapes. Like that wasn't as easy to do then as it would be now. And yeah, they saw the first day's rushes and were like, "Yeah, okay, you can cast him." So Jason Mewes went out there and didn't start getting paid until later on in the shoot.
You would be allowed to
fair
do
play
that
to Jason
these days.
Mewes. Yeah, no, of course you would. And fair play to Jason Mewes. I mean, to be fair, I guess, what else did he have going on? And I don't mean that insultingly, but it's not like he was an actor at that point. So I guess he must have been like, well, fine. But yeah, fair play to him. I do think it's certainly, especially comparing, I was taken aback when I watched it at how strong his performance was comparatively to
Clerks.
how it was in Clerks.
Yeah, because in Clerks he feels awkward and nervous, and he's stuttering over his lines a bit, and like he's not quite comfortable. But here, it's not like he slowly becomes more comfortable across all the movies. It's just 0 to 60. It's incredible how good he is at this. And that's not even to say that he was particularly bad at Clerks or anything, but you could just sense a little bit of his, he was a bit uncomfortable to have a camera in his face, I think. And I think, unfortunately, that does a little bit come through in the performance. But dear Lord, does he live the role here. This is it's just a huge jump up. And he's really good. And I'm very glad it worked out that way. Often discussed around the schoolyard was Brody's t-shirt. What the hell is the thing on Brody's t-shirt? The biggest theory around my schoolyard was that it was a warped image of Dante from Clerks.
Oh, wow.
Years later, or maybe at the time, but, as the internet became more prevalent, people got to actually discover the information that was probably already available. The shirt is actually all of the faces of the actors that auditioned for Brody morphed together, which is fun.
No, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, that was just a theory.
No, that's what it is.
Jeez, that's insane.
Yeah. Oh, I'm genuinely surprised I had a piece of trivia that you didn't know. I was expecting this trivia to be all stuff you were already aware of. Yes.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, they just for the shirt. They needed a shirt that was non-copyright, but it had to look like the sort of shirt a kid hanging around a mall might wear. So they made one themselves, and when they were doing it, they're like, "We'll just put a face on it." What? Whose face? Well, we'll just sort of That's how they came to that. So goes the story. Did you catch the Seinfeld reference?
Don't think so. No.
So Trisha says she received a 20,000 advance from Pendant Publishing. Pendant Publishing is
nice.
Elaine Bennis's sort of workplace for the first few seasons of Seinfeld.
Ah, nice. That's good.
Yeah. So Brody's comic book collection, as seen in the movie, is Kevin Smith's own comic book collection, which he'd actually had to put back together because he'd sold most of it for Clerks, to finance Clerks. And then when he'd, gotten money out of having released, sold and released Clerks, he then sort of repurchased his collection. So that's his own comics, which is cool.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool.
So Shannon Doherty's character Renee is seen wearing several different outfits across the movie. This is apparently because Shannon Doherty put a clause in her contract that stated she could keep everything her character wore. So she sort of had a plan that the character would wear everything she bought as she shopped across the day, which then led to her getting multiple outfits, which I think is fun. You might as well,
Yeah, that's
right?
good. Yeah, fair play to her. Yeah, fair play to her for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because the thing with these costume things, like they get them in your size, they're suited to you. Like I do think it's weird that a lot of the time the actors don't just get to keep the clothes. What are they doing with those clothes afterwards? Do you know what I mean? Like they're going into storage and they'll probably never get used again. Maybe someone might take a jacket out and put it on a character in a different movie, maybe. But I don't know. Anyway, I'm not for waste or just storing perfectly good clothes forever in a vault. Like the Ark of the Covenant at the end of Indiana Jones. Let the actor take them. They'll at least get worn. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's a form of recycling. Svenning was not originally supposed to be a bald character. Michael Rooker was trying to dye his hair grey, but didn't like it and decided then that the solution was just to shave it all off and thought bald would end up being better. I guess he was right. I think he looks sort of
I think that's fair.
suitably dad-like and menacing.
Yeah, for sure. But also slapstick and comedic, in the moment in the pretzel scene and stuff, which also doesn't age brilliantly just from a grim point of view. But like his physical comedy in that scene was very good.
I think it ages fine in the sense of its appropriateness, but I just think like comedy has moved on from gross out humor.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything necessarily like inappropriate about the scene. I just think like taste has moved on where people find that sort of gross out stuff less funny. This is the era of Ren and Stimpy, you know what I mean? People people found gross things funny. I don't know. There's a movie where a lady has cum in her hair and then her hair stands up on end. You know? just
I do. Have we done this something about Mary? I think we have, haven't we?
No, we haven't. No.
Have we not?
No, because I've not seen that in a long time. I'm a little scared that movie is a mess. I enjoyed it as a kid. The other movie that's in that vein of like it's a gross out sort of comedy that I've been scared of doing because I remember really enjoying it as a child, but I have not seen it as an adult is Me, Myself and Irene, the Jim Carrey movie, which I loved as a kid.
I remember not enjoying that as a kid, like watching it and being like, "How is this like a hit with people?" Yeah. I
remember loving it, but who knows? That's it's one of those movies that I'm sort of like it's on my list, but I'm scared to ever pick because I don't know if I want the answer. Yeah. So apparently, when they were filming the exteriors of the mall. To make it, because they shot this in Minnesota, it's worth noting, because it was cheaper to shoot it at a sort of mall in Minnesota than it was to actually shoot it in New Jersey. So they shot in Minnesota, and they had to put fake New Jersey license plates, like paper ones, over the backs of the cars in the parking lot, because otherwise it would all just be Canada license plates. The problem was they wouldn't always remove them, and unsuspecting Minnesota mall customers would drive away with these fake plates still attached. That apparently happened a fair bit, and it's quite funny. It does kind of give a vibe of like, even though that he had a studio behind him this time, there's still a guerrilla element to what Kevin Smith is doing. Because like, no, I think you're supposed to get people's permission before you do shit to their cars. But anyway,
yeah, I'd say, that I would have thought so for sure.
Yeah. So the elevator in which Brody and Renee have sex actually has glass doors, which they covered in the film. Covered for the film. That way people couldn't see what they were filming, but also, so that the characters couldn't see, because obviously that would break the plot of the movie. Here we go. The only film Kevin Smith did not edit himself, although he and Mosier were responsible for the extended cut for the 10th anniversary DVD. Yeah, we know how that turned out. This is a weird one. I can't figure out if this is an accident or intentional, but the poster that Silent Bob's head goes through at the end of his sort of Batman scene when he's trying to break the stage has a picture of a lady on it. That lady was Jason Lee's wife at the time, Carmen Llewellyn. Can't decide if she was just modelling at the time and therefore was in an image, or if they chose to put an image of her there, but that's who that is. Weird.
Yeah, I guess my assumption would be that's deliberate, but that's cool.
Yeah, sure. Brody wears a Henry Hudson Regional shirt, which is the high school in Highlands, New Jersey, which Kevin Smith graduated from. Little reference. All good. Why is this in the trivia? I mean, okay. Brody is named after... well, I guess... no, this is something. So Brody is named after the main character in Jaws, which is one of Kevin Smith's favourite films, one he frequently references. Obviously, Jaws is referenced directly in this movie because they would do the universal, when would you propose, as the shark hops out of the water, which is a very funny joke, because it's kind of ridiculous. And Brody's surname is Bruce, which is also related to Jaws, because that is the nickname given to the animatronic shark on the set of Jaws, the one that kept breaking down. So, yeah, there you go. While doing press for AMC's The Walking Dead, fans continued, and to this day, as I understand it, continue to bring Michael Rooker bags of chocolate-covered pretzels. I think that's quite funny. That might even be funnier than the actual joke from the movie.
Yeah, that's amazing. Fair play to them.
Yeah. I hope I'd like to think he has good spirits about that and finds it funny, but who knows?
I reckon he will, because that implies, I'd imagine now, and there's been various talks of a sequel, but all the cast always seem to have been willing to do it. But because I imagine now, if someone does that to Michael Rooker now, there's an affectionate suggestion of I've been with you on your career for a long time,
right? Yes, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's the suggestion that they've been following along for years.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I would agree. So the mall that they shot at was actually had a lot of vacant storefronts for whatever reason. So the producers, that allowed them to create fake storefronts for the film and therefore not have to pay for licensing on real stores or shoot around them. So yeah, the Eden Prairie Mall / Center, which is where they shot this, happened to be a really ideal shooting location for that reason also. So apparently the end credits telling us the fate of each character is a very specific reference to Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Now, I don't recall that from Fast Times, but apparently Kevin Smith went to the trouble of ensuring that the font and colour for the graphics matched perfectly. So that was a very deliberate reference, apparently. So there you go.
Fair play.
The Wile E. Coyote-style blueprints that Jay and Silent Bob used were actually drawn by film's producer Scott Mosier, who also has a small role in the movie, as he does in most Kevin Smith films, which I like. That's very funny. I love that he drew those because they're very cute. They're very fun. I think at one point you could buy one of them as a poster from comic book stores. I remember going to a comic book store in Manchester back in the day and seeing the Jay and Silent Bob Mallrats blueprint as a poster you could buy.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I kind of wish I'd bought one of those at the time and kept it, because that's a fun thing. But yeah, I imagine you probably can't get those anymore. Stanley is repeatedly looking to his left and right when talking to Brody. This is because he's using cue cards, because not being a trained actor, he found memorizing lines quite difficult. Although, according to reports, I don't know, whoever wrote this piece of trivia felt like slipping this little dig in. While on the other hand, Jeremy London, despite being an experienced actor, forgot his lines repeatedly. Brutal.
Jesus. Why has that Triv guy got he's got beef with that?
I know, it's strange. Fine, I guess.
Apparently, the reading... Stan was struggling with the reading for the cameo scene in Captain Marvel 2. So Kevin Feige phoned Kevin Smith, told him what the cameo was, to ask whether there were any outtakes that they could use and overdub. And so Kevin Smith was like, well, Universal should have them. So I don't know the end of the story, whether that's what they found for Captain Marvel 2. But yeah, they were certainly looking to use outtakes from Mallrats 2 to overlay into that scene in Captain Marvel where he's on the bus.
That's such a great reference, by the way. For those who haven't or seen it or aren't aware of it, in Captain Marvel, which is set in the 90s, Stan Lee's cameo, he's on the bus reading a script, learning lines. And if you look at the script he's reading, it's the script for Mallrats. And one of the lines he's saying is one of the lines from the movie, which I think is adorable. That's a great reference.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
A great way to honour one of, like, comic books' biggest champions. You know, before comics were cool, Kevin Smith was openly loving comic books and talking about them in his movies. So, yeah, good for him. This has gone on a little bit longer than I thought. An hour and 50 minutes. Wow. Sorry. This confused me for years, right? And I finally got an answer. When Renee's character, played by Shannon Doherty, runs to tell Jay and Silent Bob that Brody and TS have been arrested, Willem says, "Brenda?" And she says, "Asshole," or something like that, and then goes off. I've never understood what in the world has happened in that scene. That joke never made sense to me. Apparently, Shannon Doherty played Brenda on Beverly Hills 90210 in the 1990s, early 1990s. So the exchange wasn't in the script, but Kevin Smith told Supley, who plays Willem, to say Brenda with a question mark before the scene was shot, and then he nudged Doherty, told her he was going to do it, and told her what to say in response. Neither actor knew the other one was going to respond, so the reactions are completely genuine. Like from Supley when she gets angry and walks off, that's his real reaction. That's quite funny, and it's weird that it's in the movie because it's so specific.
Yeah, that's such a weird fourth wall breaking thing to do. Yeah, for sure.
Very strange. Obviously, one of the Kevin Smith calling cards is cousin Walter. One of the main characters in a lot of his movies have a cousin Walter who is usually odd, often sexually. Brody obviously tells 2 stories about his cousin Walter in this movie, and there was a cousin Walter story in Clerks also, implying that maybe Brody and Randall are cousins. Maybe it's the same cousin Walter, but obviously never confirming that. Maybe it's more weirdness with the identical cousins and things. Who knows? But there you go. And then obviously everyone's favourite segment, Cars Exist. The car the boys drive in this movie is a 1982 Mercury Marquis Colony Park, which is a car that exists and I'd never seen before, and I think it's pretty hideous, to be honest with you. But it is a product of its time. It's a very 80s car. Do you know what I mean? Like it's you can tell that it's like, you know, the idea is the 2 guys are broke and don't have a modern car, so they have a car that's like 10 plus years old. That's fine. It is a hideous car though. Like it genuinely like of all the cars you could choose for a movie, like literally one of the worst looking cars. But you know, that's the point. It tells you something about the characters, so it's fun. That's everything. We did it, Chris.
Boom. We did it. We don't need to know where we're going next because we already know. Dan said about it. I can't remember technically whose choice it is, but it's fine. Well, yours. Yes, it'll be your choice technically. So do you want to say for the people that don't know where we're going next, Dan?
Yes, so for the next Rewind Reviews, we are finally tackling a trilogy long in the making for us. Sort of a long time coming for us to tackle these movies. We are, of course, finally doing the Star Wars prequel trilogy. Much maligned, recent revisiting from a lot of people, reconsidering these movies. Let's find out if they hold up. I mean, what a perfect trilogy to cover for Rewind Reviews, and especially at the moment when there's sort of like bit of, I wouldn't say revisionist history, because I think everyone's accepting that they weren't well received to start with, but I think there's a lot of people that are going back at those movies and looking at them fonder now. And also in the context of a lot of people saying like, oh, does that mean people in 10, 15 years time will look fonder back at, like, you know, The Last Jedi, when that generation who grew up with the Star Wars sequel trilogy get old enough to sort of defend them online? Maybe. But I think those people will be a lot more close to being right than the people defending the prequel trilogy. But we'll see. Let's find out. So we're doing Phantom Menace next. And then it'll be Chris's choice. And I suppose he could really throw a wrench in the works technically and choose something else. But I suspect he's going to stick to the plan because we've promised this for so long. But I suppose he could really be a dick. if you want. And if you really don't fancy doing Attack of the Clones, which I wouldn't blame you, you could choose something else. Men in Black 2.
It is. I would order my excitement for rewatching these as Phantom Menace, Revenge of the Sith, Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, I think honestly that might even be the same for me, because I remember when I saw them originally, my feeling was that Attack. I always have thought Attack of the Clones was the worst. Always, like even when I was younger, that's never changed. But my theory on Revenge of the Sith and Phantom Menace, my thoughts on that have shifted over the years. I think originally I would have said Attack of the Clones was the worst one. Then it was Phantom Menace, and that the best of the three was Revenge of the Sith. But I think I was tricked a bit with nostalgia goggles, because it is the one that dovetails into New Hope, and it has music and themes and visuals that evoke that made me go, oh, it's all tied together now. I feel satisfied. But I actually think that might be a bit of a sleight of hand rather than an actual like good movie. So I think Phantom Menace may end up being the best of the three, but I've not seen them in a little while, so we'll see. It's been a couple of years. I reckon definitely 5 years, maybe more, since I saw them.
That's definitely my theory going in, but we'll see what happens.
So yeah, we're excited to cover them. Come back in a week's time for that, and then we have the Tale of the Tape, which is going to be a bonus episode looking at some of the statistics behind the 112 movies we've reviewed. We are about to hit our 100th episode, but actually, because of the Harry Potter films and the bonus Avatar Last Airbender review, which is a crossover with our other podcast, we've technically done 112 reviews, not 100. But shh, don't be a nerd. Shh, it's the 100th episode.
Also, the Harry Potter. We haven't included the Harry Potters in that count for 100. Then
no, they were bonus episodes. It wasn't a whole series of Harry Potter reviews. But so yeah, this is our 100th official Rewind review, not including our little bonus season where we just reviewed Harry Potter movies. And go on.
If we've included Avatar and we've included Harry Potter,
yes,
Go on. Do it. Chuck Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in with the Tales of the Tape. Why not? Or are you not gonna?
That's a good question. Well, so the thing is, so for those who don't know, one of the things that led to us doing this podcast in some degree, not completely, but one of the things that we reviewed all the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids stuff. The problem with that is only two of those reviews were actually movies, right? We did 4 reviews. We did 2 movies. No, we did 3 movies.
We did 5. We did 5. We did all three movies.
Then the ride
TV show, and then we did an episode dedicated just to the ride. Yeah, I only think the 3 movies. I think it's exact. Like we would literally after doing that, we were like, you know what? It was fun to watch an old movie. Let's do that again. I think as a sort of if it's a birthday celebration of sorts, I think you can whack in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Honey, I Blew Up the Baby, and Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves.
I guess this is the first time we'll talk about this properly, but the plan for that episode is to talk about like our favourites, our least favourites, which movies held up the best, which ones didn't. We're also Chris and I are both gonna do sort of a little bit of ranking for ourselves for each one. We're also gonna talk about like just the statistics about the whole thing. So which of the movies we've reviewed was the most financially successful, which was the worst. We're going to do like rankings of that. We're going to look at like which movie was the longest, which movie was the shortest, like look at all the data. And then I'm also going to do like the podcast length versus movie length to see which movie
that's good.
We talked the most about versus what it was actually about. So like a short movie that we talked about for hours and hours and hours, or a long movie we only talked about for half an hour. So that's we're gonna get some stats on either end of that spectrum as well, and a bunch of other stuff. I've started collating stuff, but the problem is I can't really finish any of the actual like locking in until we've done all of the reviews, because obviously length of review versus movie length. We've still got 3 more to record. So even though I know the financials for Phantom Menace, Revenge of the Sith, and all that stuff, I don't know the podcast length to sort of complete the line, as it were. But yeah, I'm excited to get all that data together, and we'll go through the Tale of the Tape. For those who aren't familiar, Tale of the Tape is a reference to, I think, boxing, where they call it the Tale of the Tape when they compare the two fighters' stats, their reach and their weight and all that stuff. They call it the Tale of the Tape. So because we do videotape as our theme, I thought that was a fun little play on an existing phrase that means managing and analyzing the stats and comparing them, but also references tape because rewind reviews. See, I did it. I tied it all up. Anyway, maybe when we reach episode 200, we'll do Taylor the Tape 2 and throw in another 100 movies and see if that changes what's at the top of the leaderboards. I certainly know which is going to be like some of the most like financially successful movies we've covered. In terms of just box office, it'll be the obvious ones, but I am very excited, Chris, to go through the versus budget percentage of budget, because that is a fascinating statistic to discuss. But anyway, we've talked enough. Thank you everyone for listening. I'm going to hand over to Chris, who finishes this thing.
My name's Chris Billingham.
My name's Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.
No, we did do all the usual closing stuff. All right, you can get as a little add-on at the end. You can get us on Patreon, patreon.com/NoTheMustAtic if you want to support us financially. Or, just keep listening or tell a friend or whatever. We love you. Bye.